You network? You should. Welcome to You Network. I'm Dan O'Malley, author of Networking Made Simple, your easy to follow guide to making quality career connections. My mission is to make networking less stressful and more fun. Let's go. Today's tip will be about where to find quality connections offline and in real life. Today's talk is with Elena Haskins, Senior Product Designer, OOUX Strategist, and founder of Anele Design Studio. And today's tool will help us calm our nerves before talking to people. Let's get into today's tip. You can network in real life. It's true. I've been offered freelance work from conversations I've had with people I've met out in the wild. So where do we meet people? Anywhere and everywhere. Get in the mindset that any interaction you have with someone is a networking opportunity. Be open. Let's say, for example, you're in line at Starbucks. Instead of staring down at your phone, look around. Maybe there's a really long line. Comment on that. Someone else might feel the same way and say something back. So now's your opportunity. Ask a question. You already have two things in common. You like Starbucks and you don't like long lines. Ask them what they do. People love to talk about themselves. And maybe they'll ask you back. Tell them what you do and show your enthusiasm for it. Dog parks are a great place to network, but only if you have a dog. You already have something in common with everyone there. You have dogs. So ask about theirs. Everyone loves to talk about their dogs too. I know I do. So be open when you're out and about. When you're at the grocery store, the post office, the bank, any errand you run is a networking opportunity. Every event you go to, concert, baseball game, anytime you leave your house is a networking opportunity. So go network in the wild. Today's guest gave so much networking gold, we're going to break up the conversation into two parts. A big thank you to Elena for this extremely insightful chat full of actionable insights. Let's check it out. All right, great. So, Elena, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
What title or titles do you give yourself, or you'd be happy others refer to you as?
Yeah, so I am a senior UX designer, product designer, and a OOUX strategist. I have my own UX studio called Anele. So I help B2B companies that have software, and I help them either refine it or build new features.
Very cool. So, growing up, what was your dream job?
Oh my God, I mean, literally so many. I wanted to be an artist, a vet. Like when I went through my vet phase, my uncle, who is a vet, he recorded a bunch of surgeries and gave them to me on VCR to
Oh, wow.
watch. And I even got like a doctor's kit, like a real one, not like a kid one, like a real one. And I cut my sister's circulation off because I did it too tightly.
Uh,
I even wanted to be an author, so I made my own books by hand, and I would literally sew the binding, and then I would make like fake barcodes on
wow.
them and about me pages. So it was literally a bunch of things. My ADHD was not diagnosed at the time, and I was just kind of like, oh, this, and this.
Very cool. So, how did you get from all of those, vet, author, to where you are now professionally?
Well, my professional career started as a visual designer for the most corporate thing. I was a visual designer for private equity events company. So
Hmm.
I was living my New York dream, climbing the corporate ladder. So I had like a little cubicle in the heart of Times Square. And so that's why I moved to New York City. And I was doing a lot of visual design, which was
Hmm.
also very random because I studied cinema and photography. So I really had no specific plan. I was just doing whatever. And I
Uh,
hadn't even taken a graphic design class.
oh,
And
wow.
here I was as a graphic designer. And I was like, okay, this just happened. And what I found was people who don't know design think design is all just logos because people constantly be like, "Oh, like, do you make logos?" And I'm like, "Yes, but I hate logos." And someone mentioned, "Do you UX design?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't think so." maybe. And so I ended up Googling it. And I was like, how do I not know what this is? This is so cool. And so I went to a free workshop. It was
Hmm.
about 2 hours. And, they were talking about the ins and outs. They're like, oh, this is research, this is iteration. And the thing that really stuck out to me, which I keep coming back to, was I heard about a story where a design team transformed an MRI machine in a children's oncology wing into a pirate ship. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is, first of all, really cool.
Super
And the
cool.
biggest piece of advice that stuck with me, no, feedback was a kid asked his mom when he could come back. When could he come back to cancer treatment?
Wow.
And it just blew my mind that you could utilize design in such a way to make a full experience so friendly, so exciting for someone in a really scary place.
Hmm.
So I was like, I want to do that. And I don't do as many wholesome things. Like my clients are as wholesome as that, but I have made it like a huge personal mission to like, I want to make things easier. I want to make them more fun. I want to make them more exciting.
Hmm.
So we're still here and I don't have any plans to quit anytime soon.
Very cool. So, do you have any plans, or where do you see yourself going in your career? What's the future hold?
Well, I have my UX studio, so it's more about scaling that from a business perspective. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I want to climb more ranks within UX. It's
Hmm.
more I want to build something that has longevity where I can take what I value about design and instill it to more people. So bringing on more designers, bring really honing in on like that client relationship and making sure people have something that they are proud to put their name on.
Hmm.
And I just want to bring more people on board with that and eventually, be able to hand off the baton to other people and just be like, you know what, I trust you, keep going. So it's more of like a business perspective of where
Hmm.
my goals are leaning towards right now.
Sure. Yeah, and so bringing on more people kind of ties into our next question, which is what does networking mean to you?
So networking, I feel like it's a bad rap right now because it's a huge buzzword.
It does,
And
yeah.
unfortunately, especially in the UX space, it's just a tough time. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's like a really, really tough time to enter UX, try to find UX jobs. So when I think about networking, I personally love the idea of being able to just talk to people. I mean, I
Hmm.
naturally am just a really extroverted person. And so I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. Like it's like making friends and dating. And honestly, that is the best way to think about networking is, you're not doing it to try to get something because that's gonna reek of you're just trying to use them. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people come off in a really desperate way where they know they need to network, they get really anxious about it, they don't do it in a way that's actually meaningful, and then they don't show up in a way where they feel good about it. They feel sketchy, they feel like they're doing sales, they feel like they're using people. And I'm like, yeah, if you are doing it as just sales or just to get a job, then yeah, it will feel slimy
Hmm.
versus the people who I have like long relationships with that I didn't meet just, being friends with. That's networking. I mean, even the friends that you have is still networking. Like all of my jobs, 100% of them have been through networking. Like in my entire career, my entire time as a freelancer, as a studio owner, as a full time worker has always been from word of mouth and from referrals.
Hmm.
And honestly, most of them weren't things that I sought out. People would reach out to me or people would connect me or, and so forth. So you have to play the long game, unfortunately. But I don't know that was a long answer, but needless to say, networking, it's just a conversation and it's just a buddy that might lead to a job.
Yeah, that's funny. You actually touched on a couple of points that we made in our first video, which is number one, networking is a long game, and that it shouldn't be just reaching out to people and asking for something. It's
Mhm.
making genuine connections. So yeah, those are all great points, and I think you already kind of touched upon this, but the next question was going to be how have you utilized networking in your career?
Yeah, so I am the biggest advocate of it because I've seen it work. And because I didn't go in with as many expectations as like, oh my God, I have to I have to network with this person so I can get a job. It has worked out for me because I haven't had that kind of pressure.
Hmm.
So I'll give you a few notable ones that have stood out to me,
Very
so
cool.
people can get a feel of the different kind of relationships. There's some where, okay, the very first one is a more traditional kind
Hmm.
where I met somebody. This is when I got my first internship. So I interned as a social media marketing person for Star Trek and through CBS. I had no social media experience, and
Sorry,
I
the
didn't
TV
even,
show?
yes, in the
Oh, very
movies
cool.
and
Oh, that's awesome.
the whole franchise.
Okay,
I was
cool.
managing legit like 18 accounts. It was a lot.
Wow.
And I went to an in-person networking event when I was still in college. So I went when I was in ninth grade. And luckily my college, Ithaca College, did a really great job at hosting events and really hammering how important networking is. So I
Hmm.
went to a communication school and they're like, listen, this is just how it's going to be. And they've really hammered it home. And so I like to use this example to encourage people of like why you do need to play the long game. So I went to this big event and I saw, you get to see the roster. So here we have, people from all over the different industries. I was talking to some guy, there's a guy from MLB and, Mitsubishi, like all kinds of ones. But the one guy that had like a bunch of people around was one of the VPs at CBS.
Hmm.
Now I knew that he was going to be swarmed. Anyone there is, he's not really going to remember.
Yeah.
So, which leads me to a big thing that I want to emphasize is the significance of the follow up and the consistent reminder, not in like an annoying kind of way, but hey, we met, but hi. Like, just because you have a business card or just because you have an email or a LinkedIn doesn't mean you're actually connected.
Hmm.
You're just another random person, unless you actually have a relationship. Of course you're going to feel awkward asking for a referral because you don't know them and they don't know you. So I met Bill. His name is Bill,
Hmm.
and I got his number and I was like, okay, cool. And then I backed off because I'm like, he's not going to remember me. I spent the rest of the night curating, the other connections essentially,
Hmm.
and getting to know them. Some of which like I'm still in contact with, and one guy I even did a proposal photos for like 3 years later.
Wow.
Super, like he hit me up and was like, oh hey, and I was like, oh, this is super random.
Yeah.
Anyways, I kept reaching out to Bill every, I think, 6 months. So after the event, I said, hey, Bill, really great to meet you. Would you be open for a call? Blah, blah, blah. And then I kept following up, like, and we'd have a call like every year, just so it's like top of mind. Cool. And so the year before my junior year, I saw him. So this is the third event, the third of this event in the series.
Hmm.
And I saw him and I was like, hey, Bill. And instead of being like, oh, hi, Bill, remember me? He knew who I was already. So he was
Hmm.
actually excited to see me. So the message looked a little different because I had hit him up before and I said, hey, you going to the event? Can't wait to see you. And he's like, yeah, definitely. So he's on the lookout for me now because he knows who I am.
Hmm.
And he said, hey, what are you doing this summer? And I said, working for you, as like a joke.
Yep.
And then he hit me up like 2 months later and said, hey, I actually want you to come interview. And I said, for what? And he's like, well, we have a marketing job. And I was like, I am not a marketer, but he's like, but I think your experience still will work. And I was like, okay. And I ended up getting the job. So, and this is not to say, oh, you just get things because you know people. You
Hmm.
also have to make sure you at least show competence. So while I didn't have direct marketing or social media experience, the way that he has seen me talk and do other types of work has added to that character. And so he's like, okay, I trust that she can do the job.
Yeah.
So that is story number one. Do you mind if I give another example?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first one of more you meet someone in a professional setting and then you just nurture it and then you meet them. The other one is more of a casual one. And this is why the moral of the story is just be like a good person to be around.
Hmm.
Like, I've gotten a lot of jobs from people because they like me. Like, they're just like, you're good to be around, or you seem really smart or competent. And then they see my work Because honestly, instead of the reverse of me apply, they look through my work and then they decide if they like me. I actually do the reverse. I get to know people, or I meet them. They're like, oh, I like you. Let me make sure your work is good. But then after that, we're good to go.
Hmm.
That personality is such a bigger sell because they're like, as long as your work isn't shit, you're in.
Yeah.
And like it speaks to what you can do. So you can't just have a bad portfolio and also like be a good person. You have to have both.
Right.
And yeah, I've spent many years creating a portfolio that has work that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
But anyways, when I was in UX, as I am, I was reached out to somebody that I met freshman year of college working in the school newspaper. I was a photographer. I only did it for one semester, and he was the photo editor. We weren't even really friends, but I was good at my job. Like I had a good reputation, and we crossed paths. We were adjacent, but we didn't really chat that much.
Hmm.
So he reached out because he's like, "Hey, I remember you. I noticed you're in UX. I'm a UX recruiter." And so that's how I've had a recurring relationship with an agency for the past 3 years. And so I've gotten to work with big names like Prudential, Party City, NFL, all those different kinds of brands
Hmm.
through this agency, just because I had that relationship and I set forth a good reputation. And then my work was able to back it up. And then, once I joined, they were like, oh, this is great. And then from there, I was able to, continue that relationship.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think you made a couple of really good points there. Yeah, following up is important. You can't just reach out once and then wait and expect something to happen. Yeah, and personality, definitely. You have to be yourself and keep in mind that
Mm-hmm.
everyone is a person, right? So we're all people. You want to work with people who you like. It's just kind of natural. You want to get along with them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, great points. Thank you again for sharing your time today. Before we go, is there anything that you want to share, plug, people to check out, ways to connect with you?
Yeah, so I am actually hosting an object-oriented UX workshop next week. It's completely free. It's the 17th. Yes,
Okay.
the 17th. So if you are curious about object-oriented UX, or you don't know what it is, or you've heard of it and you're like, what? It is an hour and a half long workshop. It's like mostly going to be explaining the concepts, but we're going to try it a little bit ourselves just to give you a little taste. It's a concept where we break all the UX process into more objects, which is how devs think.
Hmm.
It is a process that Sophia Prater has really evangelized, and it has just changed the way that I think about products. So I'm going to jump into that. Come check it out, and let me know if you have any questions related to it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you once again for sharing your time and your tips and advice. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. It was really nice to meet you all.
Let's look at our top takeaways from today's talk. Elena has gotten 100% of her jobs through networking. Just talk to people. Networking is a long game. Just be a good person. What was your top takeaway? Leave it in the comments. And don't forget, check out her OOUX workshop tomorrow, July 17th at 7 p.m. EST if you're interested in learning more about object-oriented UX. The link is in the description. Do you get nervous in interviews, when you're talking to people, in meetings, or anytime really? Today's tool will help you calm your nerves. It's also a great thing to do anytime throughout the day when you feel stressed or overwhelmed, but not while driving. And please note, I'm not a doctor. I'm just recommending something that has helped me. Today's tool is box or square breathing. It's a pretty simple breathing technique. It consists of 4 basic steps. Inhale for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, exhale for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, and repeat. This YouTube video gives a really good visual representation of the technique, so I'll put a link to that in the description. But you certainly don't need to watch the video to do this technique. In fact, once you get the hang of it, I find that it's best to close your eyes. And even better if you can sit outside in the sun while you do it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some value out of today's episode. You network, You should.